The first night she slept in the car, it didn't feel real. Not in the way people imagine. No dramatic breakdown. No tears running down her face. Just silence. Margaret Hale sat in the driver's seat, hands resting loosely on the wheel, staring at the dark outline of a world that no longer included her. The house was gone, sold faster than she expected. Not because she wanted to sell it, but because she had to. After her husband died, the bills didn't slow down. They got louder, more urgent, more demanding. Medical debt, mortgage, utilities, things he used to handle quietly, without ever making her feel the weight of them. Until suddenly, they were all hers. And then, they weren't manageable anymore. So she sold the house, paid what she could, watched the rest disappear into numbers that didn't care whether she had anywhere left to go. Now, all she had left was the car. She adjusted the seat slightly, trying to make it comfortable. It wasn't. The cold crept in through the windows. The kind of cold that doesn't rush. It settles. Slow. Persistent. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, closed her eyes, and listened, not to anything specific, just to the absence of everything she used to have. That was the hardest part. Not the loss itself, but the quiet after. Morning came too quickly. Margaret woke up stiff, her neck aching, her hands cold. For a moment, she forgot. Then she looked around. The inside of the car. Her belongings stacked carefully in the back. A life reduced to what could fit in a trunk. She exhaled slowly. "All right," she said softly. Not to anyone, just to the moment. Then she started the engine. The first few days passed in routine. Find a place to park. Move before anyone noticed. Keep things clean. Stay invisible. She used public restrooms when she could. Bought the cheapest food possible. Stretched every dollar. People noticed. Not directly, but in the way they looked at her car a second longer than usual. In the way conversations quieted when she walked too close. Pity. It was subtle, but it was there. Margaret didn't react. Didn't respond. She had learned something over the years. Pity didn't change anything. So she focused on what she could control. Small things. Keeping the car organized. Planning her days. Watching. Listening. That's how she saw the sign. It was tucked between two overgrown trees along a narrow country road. Faded. Crooked. Barely holding onto the post. For sale. Below it, in peeling paint. Country store. Margaret slowed the car. Not intentionally. Just enough to look. The road curved slightly, revealing the building. It sat alone, set back from the road, surrounded by tall grass and silence. The structure was old. Wooden. Weathered. The roof sagged slightly in the middle. The front porch leaned just enough to notice. The windows were dusty, some cracked, some boarded. It didn't look abandoned in a dramatic way. It looked left behind. Margaret pulled the car over. She didn't get out immediately. Just sat there, looking. She wasn't thinking about buying it. Not yet. She was thinking about something simpler. Space. A place that wasn't a car. A roof that didn't move when she shifted. A door that closed. After a moment, she stepped out. The gravel crunched softly under her feet. The air smelled like dry grass and old wood. She walked up to the porch. Each step careful. Testing. The wood creaked. But held. That was the first thing she noticed. It still held. She pushed the door open. It resisted at first. Then gave way with a low groan. Inside. Dust. Shadows. Stillness. Shelves lined the walls. Mostly empty. A counter sat near the center. Tilted slightly. Faded labels still clung to a few jars left behind. Remnants of something that used to matter. Light filtered through the windows, soft and uneven. Margaret stepped further in. The floor creaked under her weight. But it didn't give. She looked up. The ceiling. Intact. The beams. Strong. It wasn't perfect. Not even close. But it wasn't gone. And that mattered. This place could stand, she murmured. The words surprised even her. Because she hadn't meant to think them. She walked toward the back. A narrow hallway. A door slightly open. She pushed it. A small room. Storage, maybe. Then, a ladder. Leading up. To the attic. She looked at it for a moment. Then stepped closer. Not climbing. Just observing. Something about it felt closed off. Like whatever was up there hadn't been touched in a long time. Margaret stepped back. One thing at a time. She walked back outside. The wind moved softly through the trees. The building stood behind her. Not impressive, not valuable, but still there. And for someone with nothing, that meant something. The number on the sign was still readable. She called. The owner arrived the next afternoon. A man in his 60s. Quiet. Practical. He stepped out of his truck and looked at her, then at the building. "You interested?" he asked. Margaret nodded slightly. He gestured toward the store. "You know what it is. A country store." "A dead one," he said. He walked her around it. Pointed out the damage. The age. The neglect. "Been sitting like this for years," he said. Margaret listened. Not to what was wrong, but to what was still there. Then she asked, "How much?" The man looked at her carefully. Not judging. Not dismissing. Just assessing. "How much you got?" he asked. Margaret hesitated, then answered honestly. $41. There was a pause. The man looked back at the store, then at her. Finally, "Give me 5. Margaret blinked. "5. $5, he said. "And it's yours." "Why?" she asked quietly. He shrugged. "No one else wants it. And something tells me," he glanced at her car, "you need it more than most." Margaret didn't respond. She reached into her pocket, pulled out $5, handed it to him. And just like that, she owned a forgotten country store. That night, she didn't sleep in the car. She slept inside, on the wooden floor, wrapped in her coat. The air was still cold, the place still empty, but it didn't feel the same. Because for the first time since everything fell apart, she wasn't just surviving. She had something again, even if no one else saw the value yet. And somewhere above her, the attic sat in silence, waiting. The first night inside the store wasn't comfortable, but it was different. The floor was hard, the air still cold, and every sound carried through the empty space like the building was listening. But when Margaret opened her eyes in the morning, she wasn't surrounded by glass windows and passing headlights. She wasn't shifting in a car seat, trying to find a position that didn't ache. She was inside, and that changed something. She sat up slowly, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. The light coming through the dusty windows felt softer, less harsh. For a moment, she just looked around. At the shelves, the counter, the worn floor beneath her. Then she stood, not overwhelmed, not rushed, just aware. "One thing at a time," she murmured. That became her rule. Not everything, just the next thing. She started with the front. The door barely closed properly, so she adjusted the hinges using the screwdriver she kept in the car. The wood resisted. Old, dry, but it moved. Then the windows. Some were cracked, some completely open. She found boards behind the building, leftover scraps, weathered, but strong enough. She carried them in, measured roughly, then secured them over the largest openings. The difference was immediate. The wind didn't pass through as easily. The space held its temperature longer. It wasn't sealed, but it was contained. That was enough. The second day, she cleaned. Not perfectly, not thoroughly, just enough to create order. Dust swept into piles. Broken items removed. Shelves wiped down. By the end of the day, one section of the store felt usable. That was all she needed. She didn't think about rebuilding everything. Just that space. The third day, she looked at the counter. It leaned slightly. Unstable. She reinforced it from behind, using scrap wood, nails she salvaged from loose boards. It wasn't pretty, but it stood straight. That mattered. By the end of the first week, the store had changed. Not in appearance, not dramatically, but in function. It held, and that meant she could stay. Food was still a problem. Her money was low, carefully stretched. So she started thinking differently. Not about what she didn't have, but about what the store could do. The road outside wasn't busy, but it wasn't empty either. Occasional cars passed. Slow, curious. She watched them. That's when the idea came. Not big, not ambitious, just simple. She cleaned the front counter, placed a few items she could afford, bottled water, a few canned goods. Then she wrote a sign. Open. It wasn't convincing, but it was visible. The first day, no one stopped. The second, one car slowed, then kept going. The third, someone pulled in. A man in an old pickup. He stepped inside slowly, looked around. "You open?" he asked. Margaret nodded. He glanced at the counter, picked up a bottle of water. "How much?" She hesitated, then said, "Whatever you think is fair." He studied her for a moment, then placed a few dollars down, more than the bottle was worth, then left. Margaret stood there for a second, looking at the money, not because of the amount, but because of what it meant. The store had value, not in theory, in action. From that point on, she built slowly. Each day, a little more. She added items when she could, reorganized shelves, improved the front. The store started to feel intentional, not abandoned, active. By the second month, more people stopped. Not many, but enough. Word traveled quietly. There's someone running that old store again. Margaret didn't chase attention. She focused on consistency. Open when she said she'd be open. Reliable. Steady. The structure improved with her. She reinforced weak areas. Fixed sections of the roof. Cleared more space. Then, one afternoon, she remembered the attic. The ladder in the back. She hadn't gone up yet. Not because she forgot. Because she didn't need to. Until now. The store was stable. So she turned her attention upward. The ladder creaked under her weight as she climbed. Each step slow. Careful. The air changed as she reached the top. Thicker. Stiller. The attic was dark. Dust heavy. Light barely reaching through a small vent. She stepped carefully onto the wooden boards. Everything up there felt untouched. Boxes. Old crates. Covered in layers of time. Margaret moved slowly. Not rushing. She opened the first box. Empty. The second. Old papers. Faded. Unreadable. The third. Tools. Rusty. Useless. Then, she found it. A trunk. Different from the others. Heavier. She knelt beside it. Brushed off the dust. The lock was old. But weak. She opened it. Inside. Bundles. Wrapped. Carefully. Margaret frowned slightly. Then reached in. Unwrapped one. And froze. Money. Old. But real. Stacks of it. She didn't move at first. Didn't react. Just stared. Then slowly. Checked another bundle. More. And another. The same. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat back. The attic was silent around her. But everything had changed. This wasn't a small find. This wasn't luck. This was something that had been sitting there. Forgotten. Waiting. Margaret closed the trunk slowly. Not out of fear. Out of understanding. This wasn't just money. This was opportunity. She climbed back down. Carefully. The store looked the same. But it didn't feel the same. Because now, she had options. Real ones. But she didn't rush. Didn't change everything overnight. That wasn't who she was. She used it the same way she used everything else. Carefully. She repaired the store properly. Fixed the roof. Replaced broken sections. Improved the structure. Expanded inventory. Made the place stronger. Better. By the 4th month, the store wasn't just functional. It was thriving. Cars stopped regularly. People stayed longer. The shelves stayed stocked. The building, once forgotten, now stood solid. Reliable. And Margaret? She didn't look like someone people pitied anymore. She looked like someone who built something. From nothing. One afternoon, a man pulled up in a clean car. Well-dressed. Observant. He stepped inside. Looked around. "You own this place?" he asked. Margaret nodded. He smiled slightly. "I've been hearing about it." She didn't respond. Just waited. He looked around again. The structure. The operation. Then said, "I'd like to talk about working with you." Not taking. Working. Margaret glanced toward the back. Toward the ladder. Then back at him. "We can talk," she said calmly. The wind moved softly outside. The store stood behind her. Strong. Alive. And no longer something people pitied. Because the woman who once slept in her car, now on something far more valuable than anyone expected. Not just money, but control. And that was worth everything.